Danielle Smith has done it again. Alberta's premier has just signed a new oil deal that could send shockwaves across Canada, across North America, and even into global energy markets. For months, the debate over Alberta's future, whether inside Confederation or outside, has circled around pensions, independence, and Ottawa's control. But this September, the battlefield has shifted. It's no longer just about federal transfers or carbon taxes, it's about oil. The deal that Danielle Smith just signed is already being called the biggest gamble Alberta has taken in decades. And for millions of Canadians, especially workers tied to trade and energy jobs, the consequences are real, immediate, and potentially life-changing. The ink on this deal is barely dry, and already political leaders in Ottawa are scrambling. The Mark Carney government did not expect Alberta to move so quickly nor so aggressively to secure energy trade terms with foreign buyers and domestic partners. Danielle Smith is framing it as Alberta's shot at economic sovereignty, a way to ensure her province doesn't remain handcuffed by federal climate targets that she calls unrealistic, punitive, and destructive to working families. She's betting that global demand for oil, still surging despite green promises, will make Alberta indispensable. And in this September update, she's tying the entire issue directly to trade expansion and job creation. For oil patch workers in Fort McMurray, rig hands in Grande Prairie, and refinery staff in Edmonton, this deal is being sold as salvation. Danielle Smith is promising thousands of new jobs, pipeline commitments, and expanded export capacity. She's pointing to Asian and American markets hungry for Alberta's crude, saying this is the moment to push hard, secure contracts, and bypass Ottawa's delays. Her message is simple. Alberta's oil can't sit in the ground while politicians in Ottawa argue over carbon credits. It has to move. And if Ottawa won't move with Alberta, Alberta will move without Ottawa. But critics are already lining up. Economists, trade experts, and opposition leaders are warning that Smith's oil deal isn't just bold, it's reckless. By striking agreements that step outside the traditional federal framework, Alberta could be undermining Canada's collective bargaining power in global markets. Mark Carney government insists that international trade remains Ottawa's jurisdiction, not Edmonton's. And if Alberta is seen as defying federal authority, foreign partners may hesitate, fearing political backlash or instability. Behind the scenes, there are already whispers of court challenges and constitutional showdowns. The tension between Alberta's government and Ottawa hasn't just escalated, it's reached a breaking point. This deal also comes at a moment when Canada's economy is fragile. Inflation is biting, food prices are stubbornly high, and interest rates remain painful for families paying mortgages. Danielle Smith knows this. She's tying her oil deal directly to relief for ordinary Albertans. By promising job creation and wage growth, she's painting her move as the antidote to Ottawa's economic mismanagement. Her speeches in September have been clear. Alberta's prosperity will not be held hostage by political games in the capital. For seniors watching their savings erode, for parents worried about their kids leaving for work in the States, Smith is offering a lifeline. Energy, she insists, is not just Alberta's resource, it's Alberta's weapon. The international response to this oil deal is just beginning to take shape. Early reports suggest that American refiners are cautiously optimistic, seeing an opportunity to secure cheaper, more stable crude supplies compared to volatile global markets. Asian buyers, especially in Japan and South Korea, are also being linked to Alberta's new export discussions. If these connections solidify, Alberta could find itself playing a role far bigger than Ottawa ever imagined, an energy hub directly negotiating its place in the world economy. And that's exactly what Danielle Smith wants. Yet the risks are enormous. Environmental groups are furious, calling this oil deal a betrayal of Canada's climate commitments. They argue that Smith is doubling down on a dying industry at the expense of future generations. Legal experts warn that Alberta's aggressive push could trigger trade retaliation, lawsuits, or even internal penalties. And then there's the bigger question, will Ottawa allow this deal to stand? The Trudeau government cannot afford to look weak, especially with federal elections on the horizon. Danielle Smith, on the other hand, is betting that Albertans, and maybe even Canadians outside Alberta, are tired of climate politics and desperate for jobs. For workers on the ground, the politics might matter less than the paychecks. Oilfield employment has been unstable for years, with boom and bust cycles leaving families stranded. Danielle Smith is promising stability, long-term projects, and stronger protections for Alberta's workforce. She's telling workers that this deal isn't just about drilling more, it's about securing a future where Alberta controls its destiny. Whether that future actually materializes is another story. Because while promises of jobs sound good in press conferences, history has shown that global oil markets are brutal, unpredictable, and unforgiving. This September update also carries a national dimension. Pensioners across Canada, those depending on CPP and OAS, are asking what Alberta's oil move means for them. If Alberta succeeds in pulling billions of new revenue into its provincial coffers, what happens to the national pension system? Danielle Smith has already floated the idea of an Alberta pension plan, arguing that Ottawa has mismanaged CPP contributions from Albertans. An oil-fueled revenue surge could strengthen her hand, giving her more leverage to demand separation from federal pension schemes. For seniors in Ontario, BC, and the Maritimes, that possibility is frightening. If Alberta pulls out, CPP faces a financial hole, and if CPP weakens, OAS reforms may follow. In this way, the oil deal is about far more than pipelines and rigs. It's about the structure of Confederation itself. Danielle Smith is not just negotiating contracts, she's redrawing the balance of power between Alberta and Ottawa. Every clause, every agreement, every job promise becomes a political weapon in the broader war over Canada's future. Supporters call her brave, critics call her dangerous, but nobody can deny she has forced the conversation into the open. The September update also reveals how fragile Canada's energy trade truly is. For decades, Ottawa has relied on Alberta's oil to fund equalization payments and national programs. But by moving independently, Alberta is threatening to choke off that lifeline. If the province redirects revenue streams away from federal control, Ottawa's budget faces a crisis. That crisis could spill into healthcare, education, and pension funding across the country. Danielle Smith knows this, and she's using it as leverage. Her message to Ottawa is blunt: respect Alberta's autonomy, or watch the Federation unravel. Ordinary Canadians now find themselves caught between two competing visions. On one hand, Ottawa insists that collective climate action and centralized trade policy are the only way forward. On the other hand, Alberta is demanding the right to maximize its resources, create jobs, and shield itself from what it sees as Ottawa's economic failures. For families struggling to pay bills, it's not an abstract debate. It's about whether their kids will have jobs, whether their parents' pensions will hold, and whether their own future in Canada feels secure. Danielle Smith's oil deal has turned those questions into urgent realities. In towns across Alberta, you can already feel the divide. Some celebrate, saying this oil deal will finally bring back the boom years. Others worry it will provoke Ottawa into retaliation, costing Albertans more in the long run. Farmers, truckers, and small businesses tied to the oil patch are anxiously watching. They know their livelihoods depend on stability, not political fireworks. Yet Danielle Smith thrives on confrontation. By signing this deal, she's daring Ottawa to fight her. And if Ottawa does, the whole country will be dragged into the conflict. What happens next will define Canada's path for years. Will this oil deal spark a jobs revolution, pumping new life into Alberta's economy and trade profile? Or will it trigger lawsuits, sanctions, and deeper fractures in Confederation? Danielle Smith is betting everything that the first outcome prevails. Her critics warn the second is far more likely, but one thing is undeniable: Alberta has seized the moment. The rest of Canada has no choice but to respond.